time do we have here? 7:04. Okay, so actually, as people keep joining, I'll just get us started here. So I'm going to keep this on so people can see that. But for those of you joining us tonight, welcome, welcome. It is our first online ONREIA event. So this is going down in history. This is something new for us. And we want to thank everyone for attending tonight and taking some time out of your schedule, especially our panelists. Thank you for coming on and sharing what's happening in your world right now with the rest of us. Tonight, like I said, it's our first time doing an online event, so have some patience with us. We may run into snags here and there, but for the most part, I think it's going to work out just fine. We have planned tonight to run a little differently than how we normally do our events. So I noticed from those who have registered for tonight, about half the group has never been to an ONREIA event. So I'm going to give you just a little bit of a background of who we are and where we're usually located. So Shawn Allen and myself, we started this group about 2 years ago now. We're both, Shawn's a real estate investor. I'm his wife, although we have different names. Sorry, hun. We started this group about 2 years ago because we were seeing other real estate investment groups, the Right Club in Burlington, the Club in Durham, running these great events where they were bringing in speakers, lots of education, lots of networking. And although there were already some pretty good groups established in London, Ontario already, there wasn't anything where they were bringing in speakers. There wasn't a real education component to it. And that's what we really enjoyed out of some of the other groups that we were going to, and we wanted to bring that to the London area. So a couple of years ago, we started with probably 25 people in a room. Now we're usually getting anywhere between 80 to 120 people out every month. We do these networking and education events really just for 3 reasons. We really want to help connect people. This industry is a people industry. You really do need to network. The bigger and better your network is, the more successful you can be, but also the more you can lend success to others. It's not just about what's in it for you. It's about how can we all work together to build each other up. So that's one of the reasons why we created ONREIA. Shawn, why don't you talk about why we created ONREIA a little bit too?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks everybody for joining us. I know this is obviously a little bit different, but really appreciate everyone showing up. I wish we could be in a room full of people right now, the same as always, and being able to feel each other's energy and being able to network and talk and get back with each other. But unfortunately, we can't do that at this time, so this is the next best option. So really appreciate everyone joining us. As Jenn was saying, the main reason why we started it was, again, for a community to get all like-minded people together to talk about, our mutual interest, which is real estate and investing. It's a very small percent of the population that invests in real estate, and an even smaller percentage of that does multiple deals and does it full time. So it's nice to get together with people that are like-minded and are trying to lift you up instead of telling you not to do things, which usually at the population at large is doing. So that's kind of what we wanted to have. But we wanted it to be more of a structured, instead of just getting together and talking over a few beers, to have a sort of structured atmosphere to it of some education as well as networking. So that's why we decided to bring that to London, and it's gone very well. And I hope that everyone that comes out enjoys it. And obviously they do, because they keep coming back, and we're here tonight. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Sorry, there we go. Okay. The other piece of, what we're doing, can you guys see me now, or am I still sharing my screen?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. The third reason why we're doing this is really to help create a space where you can take action. And I know there are, from the little poll that I did when people registered, we've got about half of the people who registered are either brand new, have not started investing, or just in the beginning stages of investing. And, you know, this is a community where we are here to support you and encourage you. You know, it's not just about going to another webinar and learning something new and then not applying it. We really want to see everyone take what they've learned and move forward with it, put in a deal, you know, close on something, do a JV, lend, like whatever that might be. And that's what we do at our events, is really, you know, ask those questions. What are your goals for next month? What are you looking to do? So we can help support you in reaching those. So that's a little bit about ONREIA and who we are and what we do. And you'll hear more about Shawn when I introduce our panelists. Okay, let's see, where are we here? So tonight, what we're going to do is basically we have a few questions for the panel. The overall question that I think everyone is asking right now is, you know, how is everyone else doing? We all have different strategies that we're using, right? Shawn is all about the flips. I mean, we do do other strategies as well, but he's kind of the flip guy. You know, Justin is a realtor and he's in the buy sell space. You know, what is that? What's happening right now? We've got Kyle in the mortgage industry, and he's got lots of tenants. He's a landlord. So what's happening there? Sarah's JV, you know, Andrew, student rentals. We kind of wanted to pull from all of these different strategies, and Luc with wholesaling, and really see, you know, how is everyone feeling right now? What's changed in your business in the last 4 weeks? And what have you done to adapt? What sort of, you know, systems have you had to change? Have you, you know, what are you doing to switch things up so that you can keep moving forward, and, you know, really share our knowledge so that we can all move forward together. So that's what we're going to talk about primarily this evening. Like I said, if you have any questions that come up, or if, you know, one of the panelists is speaking and it triggers a question, just type their name, type the panelist's name in the chat, and then ask your question so we know who should be answering. Okay. How are we doing so far? Are we all on the same page? Yes.
Yeah, good. And I think, Jen, we should probably just mention that because this format obviously is a little bit different than in person, we don't have the networking portion. So we're going to probably try and keep this to around 9 o'clock. So from 7 to 9, obviously depending on where we're sitting with questions and answers, but we're kind of sort of looking to stick to that as a rough stopping point, 9 o'clock. So just so people are aware when they're coming on the webinar, sort of what time we're going to go to.
Okay, perfect. So I am going to introduce our panelists right now, and I just lost my screen. There we go. All right, so I'm going to go through and introduce our panelists, and then we will jump right into it. So first, you've already heard about Shawn Allen, but I'm going to go a little bit further. So Shawn began his real estate investing career in 2007, utilizing his private residence as his first rental, and after that used his, or purchased his first property to be used as a buy, renovate, and sell. Since then, we've done rentals, we've done buy and hold, we've done full-scale renovations, and some more creative strategies. Shawn's primarily known for flipping. We do roughly 30 flips a year and are starting to get into land development as well. So that's a little bit about Shawn. Andrew Hines. Andrew, you want to wave to everybody? Andrew is a real estate investor from Burlington, Ontario, and he's primarily invested in student rentals in London. At this time, he has about $4 million in real estate holdings and is the host of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing podcast. Andrew advocates the use of the BRRRR method to achieve financial independence, and he has become quite proficient in construction management, building, and development due to his value-add approach to real estate investing. Andrew owns several companies, including a construction general contractor, and has built out multiple investment property units in southwestern Ontario while managing his own portfolio. We also have Luc. Luc, do you want to wave to everyone? Luc Boiron is the largest wholesaler in Canada. Luc started his career as a lawyer, but quickly found he was more interested in entrepreneurial pursuits. He purchased his first house in 2007 and started flipping houses full-time in 2016. Now, with a focus on acquiring properties at a discount and wholesaling them to other investors, Luc and his team purchased almost 100 properties in 2019 and have a goal of purchasing 200 houses in 2020. Very impressive. Justin Konikow. Justin, how about you wave to us all? Justin is a realtor with a degree in marketing and advertising, as well as decades of experience in the industry and investments. He speaks on a national level on real estate and negotiations. As the face of the prime real estate company, he has also built a reputation and an unparalleled international network, as well as sitting on various boards, working with nonprofits, and building a business with honesty and ethics. We have Kyle Ford. Kyle, a former financial investor, sold his business in 2018 to become a mortgage broker. He has been investing in real estate for 7 years, and his portfolio includes pre-construction condos, single-family rentals, multifamily rentals, the BRRRR and flip to yourself strategy, flipping, vacation rentals, as well as using private money. As a mortgage broker, he primarily works with investors on creative acquisition and portfolio scaling. And he's expecting his first son in June. And I should mention, Luc is also expecting, do you guys know what you're having, Luc? No.
Yes, we're having a girl.
Oh, you're having a girl. Very exciting. And Kyle is having a boy. So there we go. Real estate, made in heaven. There we go. All right. And we also have Sarah Eder. So Sarah is the owner and CEO of Sarah Eder Investments. And in 3 short years, she developed a multi-million-dollar portfolio of multifamily, commercial, and student rental properties, all with JV partners and private capital. She's passionate about educating other investors and is currently working on large development projects and apartment buildings across the GTA. So we have got quite a panel joining us tonight. I also wanted to thank and welcome Jeff Wybo. Jeff has been a sponsor of ours since day one. And before we jump into the panel and get our panelists answering questions, we wanted to take a minute to talk to Jeff. And a lot of people, because we are based out of London, we're asking about the London market and, you know, what's happening there, what's the current state. So perhaps, Jeff, you can talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Shawn. Thanks, guys. Thanks, panel. Well, this all started at the last ONREIA, I think, after we finished it. Then the NBA season shut down, and then COVID started happening. And yeah, some things you guys got to know right now in the real estate market in general is that open houses are banned in Ontario. So it's tough to sell houses right now, and the real estate boards are trying to tell the agents to do more videos and stuff. So if you're on this kind of call, you're going to be dealing with some good realtors that use videos all the time. So that's great. But to probably a lot of us on this call, we have multifamily properties. Us as realtors are being told, do not show multifamily properties right now, especially in London, Ontario, and all the cities right now. So it's very tough to get in. You can get in with permissions from the tenants, but it's very challenging right now. So therefore, inventory is not changing as much right now. In London, the average price for March was still pretty good. It was $447, which was 10% increase year over year. I think the big one's going to be April once we get those stats, because everybody's been kind of sitting at home this month. Basically, what I've seen 2 types of realtors or even real estate investors. The ones that want to work every single minute of the day and the ones that are just going to take a break right now. But both are kind of somewhat accomplishing the same thing, because it's very tough to get a transaction through right now, because just either appraisers aren't getting in, banks are slow, everything's slow right now. So it's really tough. It's really hard to know. So then there's a lot of product like listings that aren't hitting the market right now because people, they just want to wait. And if you do list your property, nobody comes. So it's very difficult to kind of figure it out. I think we still need 1 more month maybe to see where the chess pieces kind of lie. I think the stats for April are going to be poorer just based on inventory, but maybe the purchase prices might be similar still. What I've been seeing a lot is you guys can get away with conditional offers right now. That's what you got to do. You got to offer conditionally. and then get the walkthrough. They're not most realtors aren't allowing, or sellers are allowing people into the properties unless you're serious. So that's kind of a chicken and the egg that you kind of have to deal with right now. And because again, like, sellers do not want you in because you're going to bring the virus in. And then there's a lot of this going on right now. So it's a lot of battles. And the other thing I'd want to talk about the London market is Airbnbs. A lot of guys on here might have Airbnbs. You can only be using them for emergency stays right now versus just leisure. I don't know who's booking a 3-day weekend to London right now. It has to be emergency.
Yeah.
But if you're stuck and you do have vacancies in Airbnb, remember you can switch over to furnished rentals right now. That would be a really good alternative in the London market because there's a lot of people that are still needing rental properties in London. So that's a bit of what's going on in London and a little bit of the province. Have a good ONREIA, guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that.
I told you he'd get on camera, Corey.
Ha, Corey.
I asked him to be on camera. All right, so let's get moving forward, and really let's talk about how the last 4 weeks have gone for each of you. And Shawn, I'm going to start with you. So why don't you share, you're primarily flipping.
Mm-hmm.
Tell everyone a little bit about what's changed in your business, and it doesn't have to be just with flipping. It could be the business overall.
Yeah, before I talk about that, I just want to make a point to what Jeff Wybo was saying there earlier about showing or looking at multifamily property. So I went to look at one today as part of due diligence, really large multifamily, is over 50 units. And they they allowed me to still go and look at it, but I had to wear a mask, I had to wear gloves. We were only allowed to have a couple people in at the same time. Out of 50 some units, we were only allowed to see 3 or 4 units plus all the common areas. So, you are still getting into it, but there's a lot of different aspects that go into that. And you really have to do your due diligence even extra on that because you're not seeing the entire building. You're not seeing or talking to everybody that you can be usually, right? So whether you're extending those conditions until that's possible, or you have to make decisions based on the alternative information that you have. But just want to make that point because we are able to still do that, but it's different now, right? So, and on the flipping side, so we're still pretty bullish on buying properties. We're not slowing down at all. However, we are needing to make some pivots. So on April 4th, if you didn't have a building permit from April 4th, and you aren't allowed to get a new building permit and continue on with the stuff that you have. So fortunately, we had a bunch of projects still on the go that already had building permits. They're long-term projects. They're going to take quite a while to finish. So we're able to continue with those. But anything new after that, we're not taking on any new projects for a flip that is going to require a building permit at this time. So it's just simple lipstick, cosmetic stuff that we can do without building permits, get in, get out, get back on the market. That's all we're willing to really take on. And having said that, we're also looking at the fact that we need to buy these properties at an even deeper discount than we were before. And the reason for that is twofold. One is I want to make sure that I buffer myself for longer term holds. So if we have to hold on to these properties and we can't sell them for an extra 2, 3, 4 months, I want to make sure that that amount of money has been built into that for holding costs, right? And I also am looking at really just taking on stuff that has multiple exit strategies. So if I can't flip it and then sell it right after, am I able to rent it, right? So there's got to be some sort of alternative to flipping and selling if that's not possible at this time. But having said that, we're still moving forward. We're just looking for those sort of deeper discounts. Okay, what was the other question for that?
Just what have you changed in your business? How have you adapted? What's different now than what you've done before?
Okay. So that's basically what we're doing to pivot for the flips. Overall for my business, so we're continuing on with that, but we're also trying to focus more now and take this opportunity because there are more opportunities coming with the multifamilies and the larger multifamilies to add those to our portfolio. as well as concentrating on our development projects as well. So we're kind of taking the opportunity to sort of step back, making sure we're looking long term, but still trying to buy at the same pace or even more so than we were before. On top of that, we're also trying to really pull out as much equity as we can refinance out of the current properties that we have, which is, I'm sure Kyle can talk to that, but is very problematic at best right now. So.
All right, well, Kyle, it sounds like Shawn kind of lobbed one up for you there. So why don't you take over next and talk about what things have changed in your business. You have a lot of rental properties, I believe, but also on the mortgage side, I know a lot of people are curious about, you know, refinancing right now. Why don't you take on over?
So how's it going, everybody? So on the rental property side, definitely looking to stabilize any properties that I have. So there was 2 Airbnb units that I had in Kitchener. We've been kind of considering moving them back to long-term rentals. We made that transition. The good news is there's still a lot of demand for rentals. We posted both of those up 2 or 3 days ago, and we have several quality applications back. We're leveraging technology. We're doing video walkthroughs. We're doing all the pre-screening in advance, and it's not until the tenants approve that we're even taking them to the unit to see. So on the rental property side, stabilization, Justin and I have talked about this a lot as well. I'm really taking this opportunity both on my property side and my mortgage business to focus on systems and getting things, you know, set up and moving into the modern era of technology and how we're doing things. Virtual meetings are the norm. You know, the great thing about the mortgage business now is we're able to do essentially the entire file without actually meeting each other in person, though I prefer to do that. We're able to do it virtually. In terms of what's going on with lenders, the good news is if I have files funding every single day still. We have refinances closing on rental properties. We have refinances closing, or purchases closing on rental properties every single day. Now, the other news, I'm not going to call it the bad news, I'm going to call it the other news, is lenders are scrutinizing everything. They will call a job letter the day of closing to make sure that the employment hasn't changed. The big news right now that in a lot of real estate circles is Scotia made an announcement that they're not allowing you to use their HELOC product as a down payment on a rental property. Just to add some insight into that, that means Scotia is not going to issue the subsequent mortgage. That doesn't mean you can't still use your Scotia HELOC as a down payment on an investment property. You just can't get that same mortgage from Scotia. The one change that they made that I thought that is actually a little bit more frustrating for me and a lot of people who do the BRRRR strategy is Scotia has now made it that you have to show 3 months of your rent deposits before you can refinance. So a lot of people were closing with private money and refinancing before even the first of the next month. Now you have to wait 3 months proving that bank statements unless it appraises at market rent, which appraisals is a whole other conversation. Did you want me to keep going on the appraisals, or did you want me to pass the puck here?
Shawn, I'm going to have you pop in a little bit here. Where did you have any follow-up questions for Kyle about that?
Just maybe a comment, not so much a question, and then Kyle can maybe talk to about that. But I'm noticing that with the lenders, specifically with the private lenders, that they're pivoting a lot in making what the word would be, but maybe interesting requirements or changes that they wouldn't have before. Dropping loan to value very quickly. It's almost arbitrarily, changing their minds for things as they go. Are you seeing that a lot with different lenders, and is that sort of commonplace now? And is there something that we can, sort of expect as we go?
Well, I'm not seeing it so much with my specific database. My lenders have been overall fairly comfortable moving forward and investing, but I'm getting a lot of people coming to me who lenders have recently pulled out on. And that's something that I'm hearing regularly. I think what we need to do from the investor perspective, and we need to be very clear with investors that the stuff you mentioned, Shawn, that we have multiple exit strategies on this property. We don't just have one way to pay you back. I think one thing that that people need to, when they're presenting to a private lender, and Shawn, you and I have had a conversation similar to this, I think, just being very specific about what you're looking for, how much you need, how long you need it for. Just asking for a lot of money can make it harder with the lender. Very specific on how much you need, how long you need it for, how they're getting the money back. And as long as you can present that clearly, there are still people who are funding files.
What would you say is the percentage of, like there's a lot of lenders that are sort of going to the sidelines now and waiting it out, so to speak, for weeks or months. And then there's still some that are lending business as usual. What can you give me a sort of number of what that looks like? Or
I would be guessing, Shawn. I really would. It's certainly, there are people who are nervous about what's going on right now. And at least when the state of emergency comes out, I'm hopeful that some of those people who are sitting on the sidelines are going to say, okay, the state of emergency is over. They're more comfortable, but I'm very much speculating on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, let's see. Does anyone from the group have any specific questions for Kyle before we move on to the next panelist? I'm just going to open up the chat here. What do I see here? How long, James is asking how long the city slated for required permits.
I'm not sure what that means exactly, but so for the permits, if you don't have one already in place, then you're not going to be getting a new permit. We're also having issues, as part of that for flipping is, even if you had that permit in place and you've continued on building or doing what you were doing with that required permit, being able to get someone to come in and inspect that work so that you can move past that next checkpoint is problematic. So some of the townships, some of the cities are shut down completely, meaning they're not having their inspectors out doing anything. Others have their inspectors working from home. They can go into the property that the subject property, and if no one's there, and go in on their own, and they can leave a note, and whether it's passed or not passed with their comments. So that's problematic, and I'm not sure where that's going to play out. But we're trying to mitigate some of that by, well, for instance, instead of doing just normal wood posts in cement, we'll do helical piles and just get that signed off by an engineer, right? So we're trying to just do different things that we can keep projects moving, but I'm not sure if that answers the question. If it doesn't, maybe you can rephrase it.
Did that answer? Yeah.
But move on, Jenna. We can go back to it if need be.
Sure. All right, let's move on to Justin. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about, specifically what's been shifting in your business, as well as perhaps how we can be adapting right now.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to help. One quick note, Natalia Muliar is screen sharing, so I'm not sure if that changes the screen for anybody that's watching. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up in case you are recording this. I'm going to give everybody kind of a high level view on what we do, because I'm not really a real estate agent. And even when I have conversations with people about what we do in real estate, I kind of say I'm like kind of the anti-real estate agent, because we operate more as a company than we do individual real estate agents. So I own Prime Real Estate with my wife. She's the brains of the operation, MBA from Ivy, amazing at analytics. She doesn't sell anything. You've never seen her. I'm obviously the face. You may have seen me online quite a bit. Now, I'm also kind of the most public-private person you'll ever meet, because there's a lot of aspects to what we do that we do keep behind closed doors. We do residential commercial investing. I call it focused diversification, because in a market like London and surrounding area, let's call it 500,000 people plus, we are small enough that one thing affects the other that affects the other. So if I represent a large commercial client like the Arcane deal downtown, that was us, that trickles into a fourplex deal that I did with Kim and John Simpson, where they did very well. Actually, Anna and Doug that are on the call that they absolutely crushed as well, because we knew that was happening when we did the deal when nobody else was paying attention. Now, we operate in silos, so I have dedicated team members for each. I know how to make the sauce because I've done all the transactions myself. I've been involved in investing since early 2000s, and I've kind of watched the city grow. And I came from a place, Montreal, in 2000, back when London was a small town, but London's not a small town anymore. And as it grew, we started to notice that obviously we started getting on the provincial stage in like 2017, which meant that all of a sudden everybody that was doing what they were doing in Hamilton and Kitchener couldn't do it there anymore because the cash flow wasn't there, came to London. Now, what we saw in 2017 was happening right up until March. Like, I know everybody here is savvy. I know a lot of your faces and you're active real estate investors. I was putting out content, and I'm conservative by nature. So I'm usually, preparing for the worst case scenario, but being ready to act in the best case scenario. And I was saying to my clients, we're going back to 2017. Like, the appetite for what's happening in London, like $100,000 over asking price on properties, feeding frenzy, no multifamily inventory, unless you're dialed in on the back end on how to get that inventory. The other problem we were having in March was DCRs, and the numbers didn't make any sense because Uncle Jimmy bought his property in like 1960, but wanted 3.5 million for it, and the bank's not going to finance it. So what Shawn's talking about made a ton of sense. You go to private lenders, and even the conservative ones were giving good loan to values and decent terms. But I think what happened was, we were actually in the States when COVID hit. We got home well before everything started happening with the borders and everything else, because one of my clients is a high-level military and told me what was coming. I didn't expect it to do what it did in the first 3 weeks. And, I think that was kind of a hard reset. So as I was talking to clients, because we had a lot of files on the go, they were asking me, what do you think we should do? We had some large multifamily buildings under contract. You're talking, 30 to 40 unit buildings where we were in the due diligence phase, and we couldn't get into the buildings to do the inspections and do the due diligence. So, if I'm going to tell you what I see happening in the real estate world in Southwestern Ontario is, on the residential side of things, it's on fire. It's literally almost as busy in terms of activity-wise on listings as just before all the COVID stuff happened. I was involved in 3 deals today. 2 of those deals one had 8 offers, one had 10 offers, the other had 6 offers on it. We listed 2 more properties today. Each of those properties had 10 showings. That's today. If this meeting was a week ago, I would have told you that we were maybe 20 to 30% of what we were seeing previously. Now, that's the residential housing market. That's one silo of our business. As I mentioned, one affects the other, which affects the other. The investment stuff ground to a halt from the standpoint of real estate agents don't really want to list them because they don't want to deal with the tenants, because we technically can't go into the properties. But we were navigating those waters for the last year. Like, if you looked at any multifamily building over 12 units in the last year, you would have found maybe 3 on the system, and the numbers didn't make a whole lot of sense. And most of the buildings and projects that you would pick up, you would get through connections and people that knew a guy that had a building, and he was happy getting X number. You put it under contract, you do the due diligence. And, where we're seeing success in the investment side of things is that. So our system, even pre-COVID, I would probably say 60% of our deals get put under contract sight unseen. Kyle's done them with me, where I go to the property, I tell him it's solid, he writes a contract in it, we lock it up, then we do the due diligence and we do the deal. But that's where establishing, a proper team or relationships where somebody calls you with a package of 9 properties, you have a level of expectation of what the properties are going to be like. You run them through your system, you negotiate a deal that makes sense, and you haven't seen the property yet. You get to the point of due diligence. Now, how do you navigate those waters? Because the tenants aren't letting you in, and so on and so forth. Where we found a lot of success recently is paying the tenants. So given what's happening right now, and given, a lot of people are out of work and whatnot, we are actually offering tenants cash to shoot videos of properties, to help appraisers out, to find new ways of doing things. And I'm not talking tons of money, but an extra $100 or an extra $50 for a tenant to shoot a video on their iPhone. They're bored out of their minds anyways, is a good way of accomplishing that. Now, I'll say one more thing before I kind of jump off, because I could literally probably talk about this for 2 hours. When you do that, you have to be prepared. So you need to give them instructions. You can't say, can you just shoot a photo of the kitchen? They'll literally shoot a photo of the kitchen where you can't see anything that you want to see. If you need to see the plumbing, the electrical, the infrastructure, the foundation, you want to set a bar or a level of expectation of what you need from them. And I would say even go a step further. So if any of the realtors on this call are listing properties, do 10 times the amount of due diligence that you've ever done on a property. So we're spending more money on our listings and more time prepping them so that we don't need anybody to go through them, and we're showcasing them warts and all. So that, I think, is going to be the biggest change that you see in real estate coming out of this. I think consumers are going to get used to buying stuff sight unseen, doing virtual tours. Our virtual tour process is better than anything we've ever done probably in the last year from the standpoint of saving people time, because we're looking at ways that I can take you guys on a tour, show you the property, jump on Google Earth, show you what's happening around it, pull up my stats, sold data, show you what's happening, and the value that you get as a buyer. I just saved you half a day. You don't have to take any time off work. We basically did a tour. And if you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm curious about it, I may even go a step further and maybe I'll go by myself and preview it and do that extra task for you, because that's my value prop to you as a real estate agent, right? So I think the role of a real estate agent is going to change. The dynamic around putting properties under contract is going to change. And I think the investors that are going to see a lot of success are the ones that have dialed in their wants and needs, what their pro forma looks like, their level of expectation. They have a system in place that they can analyze deals, put them under contract, and then just give yourself probably twice as long for due diligence. So if it was going to be a 30-day due diligence, make it 60. If it's going to be 15 days, shoot for 45. Expect hurdles with the tenants, expect hurdles with the lenders, and obviously just build in that buffer. One clause I did want to share with you guys, and I pulled it up, was around the land registry offer. So this goes in all of our offers, and it basically stipulates that once the deal is firm and binding, there's an automatic extension that applies if for some reason anything happened and the land registry office were to close. Because I was given direction by my one client who's on the Biowarfare Council for the Department of National Defense, who essentially told me there could be a second round, and I don't think we're going to go there. I actually see it going the other way. It seems like people are going out, things are picking up again. I think we're going to return to normal life quicker than I thought we would. But, you know, worst case scenario, it's good to have that in your offers because we don't know what's going to happen, right?
That's good. Instead of cash for keys, we got cash for videos. I like it.
Exactly.
Great tip, Justin. And oh, hang on, we got some stuff in the chat here. Andrew Hines, great idea, Justin, with the tenant videos. Same with Kyle Ford. Chaos theory, James Fernandez. Something screws everything up. We all adjust. We maybe never go back to the way it was. Love how you've adjusted, Justin. That's awesome. All right. Let's see here. Who do we still need to hear from? Luc, why don't you talk to us about what has shifted now wholesaling? I know it seems like wholesaling's picked up. There's a lot of people that have started doing it or wanting to get into it. So why don't you talk more about what has shifted in your business right now?
Yeah, well, wholesaling picking up, that's not a COVID thing. That's been happening slowly for the past few years, that more and more people are trying to get into wholesaling. COVID itself, there's what I've found is the first few weeks when things really got messy with COVID, a lot of sellers, many were still contacting us, but they were telling us, you know, we're interested in selling maybe in a couple months when this whole thing dies down, but they weren't really ready for to sell right then. And I knew it was just I was waiting for the first seller to kind of go, screw this COVID thing, I need to sell now. And we got a couple under contract, but you know, I need to sell now. I'm willing to give a big discount. I need to get out right now. And so now we've gotten a few of those. And so that's kind of helped me regain my confidence. Well, I guess I kind of knew it was going to happen regardless. Now it's a matter of selling them. What we found, and anyone on our buyers list can see, we've still been sending up properties consistently. Might have been a little bit of a slowdown, but we're still sending up properties regularly. We're still getting a lot of them under contract. In fact, I think we've got 3 more we need to send out in the next couple of days. So we're definitely tying up properties. So that's no longer the hard part. The hard part is now selling them. What we found is our buyers are pulling back. And I still believe, you know, if a property is a great deal, we can sell it. But those properties where somebody was happy to jump on it before because it was, you know, less than market value and they couldn't buy anything on the MLS, they now want to see, you know, this needs to be an amazing deal for me to do it, especially with the flippers. The flippers are pulling back even more. I've seen the landlord, you know, the duplex conversion investors pull back as buyers, which I understand a lot less because right now the properties we're selling are at a further discount than normal. Like, they're getting really good deals, the people who are buying from us. So I think some of the landlord buyers are pulling back more than they should. Some of the flippers are pulling back to kind of just see where things are going to go, because things should be relatively back to normal by the time they're selling it. But if it's a really quick light flip, you might be selling at a bad point. My kind of prognosis, crystal ball, complete guess, well, not educated guess, is I think this is going to kind of be like a trampoline. You jump off a cliff, you hit a trampoline, you're going to go back up, but you're not going to go maybe back all the way up, but you're going to get back up quickly. So I think we're going to see, we obviously have seen a huge drop off in sales. We haven't seen a huge drop in prices. We may see a bit of a drop in price, but I think it will be temporary. I think things are going to come back. And if you're thinking of selling a property in a year from now, 2 years from now, I would probably expect prices to be higher than they are now. I don't see like a long-term decrease in prices from where they are. So on the wholesaling side, another thing, we often held offers, and we're finding most of our buyers just aren't willing to compete on wholesale deals or really on anything at all. So most of the properties we're selling now, there's only one person interested. And so we're selling at a bigger discount, and our kind of wholesale fees are getting squeezed down to smaller amounts. Adjustments we've made, you know, we're giving sellers the option to do video calls to sell us their house. You know, we'd schedule a showing after putting it under contract, but we will buy it sight unseen. Ideally, though, we would get pictures from the seller, do a FaceTime or, you know, a WhatsApp video call with the seller, so they can show us around the property, and then we can send them a DocuSign, get the property signed up digitally, and then schedule a showing to see it. So we will still go see it, but where the seller is nervous about this whole COVID situation, we will try to do as much as we can virtually before going to see it.
I know Luc's still working and still getting deals, because one just came across my phone about 3 seconds ago. So Luc's still out there selling deals. I might take that one. But I have a question for you, Luc. So for the people who are wholesaling or thinking about wholesaling, is there any additional clauses that you're putting into the actual agreement to like specifically for COVID?
Yeah, well, we have a COVID clause that's basically, if we're unable to close the transaction because of COVID, that it will automatically be extended until a few business days after it is able to close again. Right. So it kind of just it doesn't kill the deal in the time of the essence clause. It allows it to automatically extend. We're also asking for longer conditional periods than we normally would, where we might normally ask for 5 to 10 business days. Now we might be asking for 15 to 20 business days as a conditional period. That also gives us some time right now. If we tie something up today and we have 15 or 20 business days, it might be a different situation 2 or 3 weeks from now, or right. the feel of the market might be a little different. So having a little more time in that agreement is good for us. Yeah. Also, somebody asked me specifically, somebody asked, not to me specifically, how do wholesale houses different from the homes Justin sells? So I didn't explain quite what it is, but basically what we do is we buy homes privately from sellers. So it's not on the MLS, it's not sold through a real estate agent. And then we send it out to our buyers so it's an off-market deal, and we sell it at a discount. So you might have a house that's worth $300,000. We might go to a seller and buy it for $250,000 because they're embarrassed to show it because it's in bad condition. But in bad condition, it's still worth $300,000. We buy it for $250,000. We send it out to our buyers list. We sell it for $270,000. Let's say that's 10% under market value. The person buying it from us got a good deal. The seller got what they wanted, which was minimal showings, easy transaction, clean offer, and we made a $20,000 assignment fee in there as the wholesaler.
Can I speak to that really quickly? Just so that people have an understanding too, right? Like when you're approaching a real estate agent that's listed a property, their mandate and their fiduciary duty is to the seller to get them the best price and conditions. Now we know that's not always the case, and you know, there's people that look out for their own interests and want a double-ended deal and cut you back a portion, whatever that looks like. But keep in mind, if they're doing that to the seller that they have that agreement with, they're probably going to do it to you too. So you're either better off to have conversations like with people that have properties that aren't in that same situation, or work with somebody that you know has your back. And it all comes down to relationship and trust, right?
Absolutely. And as you said, the seller, the realtor for the seller usually has a duty to get the most they can for the seller. And we deal with the small percentage of sellers that aren't necessarily looking for the most they can. They're, you know, for example, they want an easy transaction without a lot of showings because their adult son lives in the house and they need to sell the house to get the son out of the house. Or the lady who had 12 cats and was afraid that if she had a lot of showings, a cat would get out and get hit by a car. So that's why she chooses not to sell through a realtor. She's not looking for the most money. She's looking for a fair offer, but get the other benefits of that it's not just about the most money. There's some other things that are more important to those sellers. And that's why we serve, you know, a small percentage of the population of sellers.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Luc. Sarah, let's hear from you. What, and then Andrew will finish up with you, and then we'll move through the panel again with some other questions. But Sarah, curious to know, because you do a lot of joint ventures. So
yes.
Talk to us a little bit, that can be tricky in the best of times.
Oh, yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about how this whole situation has impacted your business and what are some things you're doing to shift?
Yeah, so it's definitely been, you know, interesting times. I feel like we are, you know, working very hard lately to keep our investors calm. I mean, we use a lot of, you know, conventional JV partners. So those are just standard, you know, mortgage holding, you know, type of investors, but we use a lot of private lenders too. And, you know, the conversation Kyle and Shawn were having about private lenders dropping out and changing terms on us like last minute and, you know, asking for just like a little bit of the moon, if I can say that. You know, it's definitely been a challenging time because a lot of our investors, a lot of our lenders have decided to take a backseat, ride it out. Most of my lenders have said a few weeks. Like, I think they do want to see this emergency, you know, terms like lifted, not necessarily the whole province open up again, but, you know, they want a month's worth of sales data to compare this to. They want to see how many houses are actually selling, how many tenants are paying their rent. You know, are you going to be able to sell this house that we're giving you all this, you know, financing for? So yeah, it's definitely been a lot of convincing, a lot of reassuring, a lot of, you know, just kind of soothing our partners into, you know, understanding that like it's our opinion that, kind of like Luc was saying, like we don't think the market is just going to crash. We don't think the values are just going to dip significantly. And in terms of pivoting, we are kind of taking more of like a safe and sound approach with my investors. So typically I'm a pretty aggressive type of BRRRR strategy investor with my multis. We're adding secondary suites, third suites, fourth suites, you know, tearing things, gutting them, you know, really aggressive ARVs and renovation strategies. Whereas now we've certainly dialed that back and said, okay, listen, we're going to find you a really nice multi. We are going to renovate it. We are going to refinance it, but we might be looking at like a year to a year and a half term, not like this 3 to 6 months we typically shoot for. So, you know, it's like this different conversation that's like, hey, let's just take the tenant's rent for now, stabilize the building, let's hang tight for a month or two. Then, you know, when they've lifted all of these construction, you know, terms, now let's start to consider like turning over the tenants, like, because that's a huge issue with buy and holds, right? Like you're getting in there. Usually we would just do a standard cash for keys type of negotiation, call it a day and get in and renovate. Well, cash for keys is not happening. And most tenants, you know, we don't have the landlord tenant board to lean on, even if we wanted to evict the formal way. In terms of cash for keys, they have nowhere to go. So it's challenging. Like we're all kind of in lockdown. I mean, I still have done a little bit of cash for keys, but for the most part, we're a little bit on standstill in that regard. So we're still buying. We're definitely, I mean, we're still picking up flips. We're still picking up BRRRRs. We're still picking up multifamily, but our trajectory has changed. The conversations with my JVs is much more like, hey guys, your capital is going to be locked in longer. If you want the property, now is the time to do it, because we are allowed to put in extra due diligence. We can take our time for once. We don't have to go in firm. We get all these conditions. So I'm trying to, talk to my investors, say, hey, this is actually a good time. You might not get your capital back as quickly, but we can bargain better deals. We don't have to be in so much of a frenzy to close on some of these multis. So not much has changed, I guess, overall in the business, but we definitely are having to have much, much different conversations with the investors, telling them, their capital has just got to hang tight. We have to take it slow, work with the tenants, work with the city. There's nothing much we can do, right? We have to kind of play by the rules. And yeah, I mean, there's still people lending. There's tons of investors still willing to take a chance in this market. And I do really think that in the next couple of months, we're going to start to see kind of a aggressive kind of spike again, because there's so much demand. So.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Andrew, you do a lot of student rentals, and no one's in school right now. So, but they still need someone.
Andrew looks like he's getting ready to put us on his podcast right now.
Andrew, why don't you talk to us about what has shifted in your business since COVID-19 has hit?
Okay, so just before I get into it, and go ahead and ask me questions if you want me to expand more on anything. I'll just say that my approach has kind of been a little bit different for a while, but for context, I've got a mortgage background, so family's in the mortgage business on my wife's side, and then I'm in the student rentals, also in construction. So I'm seeing it from a lot of different angles all at once right now. So I'll just kind of dig into what I see, what I'm doing personally, and what I'm seeing is different. One thing I'll say is really good is on the re-renting side, on the non-student rental stuff right now, people aren't expecting to get into the places. So I was already set up with virtual tour and an online application to just even see the place. And now I'm feeling it's the time to actually push that even further. And like Kyle was saying, don't even let them go in unless I have a fully accepted application, because it's just going to make everything that much easier. So I like that change. That's definitely a positive. On the other side of things, like with construction, what I've seen change is, well, for one, you can't walk into your hardware store anymore. The most effective thing anyway in my business has always been properly ordering stuff ahead of time and having it delivered. So for context, I'm doing 15 townhouses right now. I'm building that for a developer, and everything we have delivered to the site primarily. There are, the odds and ends that you need to go get, and there might be a lineup. You got to wait to get into the store, but it is still happening. I've noticed some supply chain delays. Trim and door suppliers, Shawn, I'm sure you've noticed the same. People are just saying, hey, we were supposed to get 2 trucks and we only got 1. There's just less things showing up. Your window orders are backlogged. Everything is a little bit slower. And the longer this goes on, that's only going to compound. So I know we're all on the same page, hoping that this wraps up very soon. But for now, I'm grateful that we're still able to proceed. We're still able to get things done there. For the student side, this is something where a game plan needs to absolutely change if you're in the acquiring mode. Excuse me. So if you're in the acquiring mode with students right now and you are buying something that's vacant, you're going to have a little bit of a challenge getting somebody to sign up for May 1, which is the typical date that I'd like somebody to move in. That's not going to happen. I think the general feel would be, let's get really close to September, see where we're at, and the kids that don't yet have a place are going to decide whether or not they're going to sign up for something. Fortunately, I did my leasing for the 2020 to 2021 rental season. I did that back in October, November of last year. So I'm okay for the interim. Where this would be a bit of a challenge for me would be come, September, if we're not in school. That's when I start actually reaching out to my existing tenants and priming them for whether or not they're staying or whether I'm bringing tenants through for the next group. So I'm showing properties 8 months, call it 6 to 7 months before students are actually moving in, which is a saving grace here. So in conversations that I've had with students, basically the only thing that's happening right now is I have students with a person in their group that all of a sudden decided they're not coming back to school next year. They've already found a replacement, and that replacement is willing to sign on and take all responsibility. Their parent is willing to sign on and guarantee that money. So I'm not having trouble with that. I've had one parent reached out to me. He's like, well, what do you think is going to happen? I'm like, I really don't care. Like, I mean, this was just a favor to my existing tenant. I'm like, sign it if you want, or don't, like, or you can sublet from him. So that's the beauty of being in the contract. And I just reason with people. I'm like, look, I'm not really in a position to let anybody out of their obligation here. So my fundamental philosophy with real estate investing is probably relevant here. I have, for a long time, because I've been burned really bad. I bought in the US, and when I first got into real estate investing, I made some really bad moves, lost a whole bunch of money, got hurt real bad. So I have really good fundamental investing now, I think. So I haven't been hyped up into bidding wars and paying too much. I've been very strategic about what I've bought, and I've always bought for cash flow, and I've always held a pretty big cash reserve. And that, I think, is so critical right now, because we have no idea how long this is going to go on. Like, what if it is really 18 months before you can get a case heard at the landlord tenant board? I mean, if it is a really long time, that's going to put some landlords right out of the business. So I think the big thing is, whether you're investing now or in the future, you need to figure, like, if I'm buying a student rental, I might have to leave that vacant for a year, 2 years, who knows when this all blows over. So you need to get a deep enough discount to warrant that. And in my head, you also need to be thinking, I have no idea, and not even the best economist in the world has an idea exactly what's going to happen here. I can speak to economic fundamentals. That was something I studied in school, and I'm happy to dig into that to kind of give you some basis. But no, anyone who tells you they know what's going to happen, they don't know. So I've long approached this, that if I'm going to buy something and I'm planning to keep it at least a year, I'm going to be okay to keep that 20 years. I'm going to buy good fundamental real estate that I like, and I would be okay to keep long-term. Key thing there, if I'm going to keep that, it's got a cash flow, and it's got to cash flow well. Otherwise, one day I'm going to resent that property. One day I'm going to be like, it's underwater. I owe more on it than it's worth. And I also have to pay it. That was a big reason why I never got into the Toronto scene, never wanted to go into negative cash flow, because you just don't want to be in that situation. So fundamentals still apply. I will still buy, but the deal would have to be exceptional for me right now. I'm more in the investigate, study the market like heck, just really, really know my stuff and have a very good feel on what's going to happen. So by all means, Shawn, Jenn, let me know what you want me to expand on.
Sure. We actually had a question come in here from Doug and Anna Scott. Andrew, are you getting any rental reduction requests for reduced utility use because you couldn't sublet?
I have not had anyone ask for a discount at all. And I had one tenant out of about 30 that I collect from, and that tenant paid 10 days late. That was the only hiccup I had on April 1st. So I was very, very fortunate. Time's going to tell as we go through this. Again, cash flow reserve, super, super important. I'm not going to change any contracts, anything that somebody doesn't pay me, unless they're, being really reasonable and we work it out. I'm going to expect them to pay it one day. And my conversation with them would be, look, Jim or Judy, like, I don't want you to accrue a debt with me. So let's just work something out here and make it work for both of us. And I think that if you have a decent cash flow reserve for your properties, which I highly recommend, if you're being super aggressive and you want to buy 2 more properties and that would spend your cash, maybe reconsider that right now. Just make sure that you've got the buffer you need to get through it. So as far as reducing for utilities, I mean, Doug and Anna, I wouldn't feel compelled to do that. I mean, if you included utilities, you don't need to give them money back just because they didn't use much.
Andrew, maybe you could expand a little bit. With our audience, it looked like about a good quarter of them at least are pretty new to real estate investing. They might have 1 or 2 rental properties. When you say have a good buffer, maybe talk a little bit more about what that looks like for you.
Okay, good question, actually. I would size up any house you're going to look at and understand the things that could go wrong. The big monster cash calls that could come. They're kind of like a ticking time bomb. They're going to come sooner or later. It's just a matter of when. And I'll give you some examples. I have had a rainstorm in the main floor of one of my properties because somehow the plumbing overflowed and the floor above it happened for weeks and weeks. sent multiple plumbers in, could never figure it out. The whole thing ended with me actually sort of semi-gutting that house and rebuilding it. But had I not, I mean, it would have been about probably a several $1,000 flip, or sorry, a fix. So old cast iron plumbing, it's going to leak at some point. Be wary of that because it can cause damage in the $5,000 range, could be $10,000. So you need to know that could come up. A roof, depending on your pitch, your size, you could be into $10,000. I've been quoted 15 on one of my properties. Your sanitary line going out to your road, roots, it just seems to happen so often on any property that's older than, say, the 70s. You're getting a lot of
today.
Yeah, you get roots in there. I have a maintenance schedule where I auger out my lines every August on the ones that get them, but it's only a matter of time before one of those collapses, and now I'm digging it up and I'm into $10,000, $15,000, could be even 20. So you need to know, if you're buying an older property that's got old cast, or it's got an old furnace, it's got an old air conditioner, it's got maybe knob and tube wiring, which you should probably just plan on getting rid of sooner than later. You don't necessarily have to for your insurance company, but it's a good idea. If you find yourself, buying those properties, you need to be setting some money aside or have access to that money somewhere. Beyond that, like where I'm at right now, every property I have, I don't even touch the money until I have at least $15,000 in that account. So that's just for me. And some I feel even more. And that allows me to sleep at night now. There's other things that keep me up at night, but it's not the fact that I don't think I can weather the storm or make it the next few months, or if somebody doesn't pay me, I won't very diplomatically work through that process to get that money. One of the things I don't think people talk about enough is there is always a legal procedure to get your money. It might take time, but as long as you can be patient, there is always a procedure. And my friend's a lawyer. I was just away with him, and he's like, well, why aren't you going after these people that, owed you like $2,000 here or whatever here? And I'm like, I can't be bothered. And I think a lot of people could relate to that. I don't want to bother with that. I just want to move on. Well, he's like, well, it's not really any extra work. He's like, you go to the landlord tenant board, they give a payment order. You just go register that with the court. And then for like $120, I think he said, you can garnish their wages or take it from their bank account. There's like 10 or 12 different ways to collect. I'm not a lawyer, so check with your lawyer. Maybe even Luc knows a bit more about that than I do, obviously. But there's options, right? And when you have a cash reserve, man, like these things all just become, hey, no sweat. It's part of my business. And I think that's the big thing when you're a new investor. It's not just about getting the property. It's about being able to run the business that comes with the property, because it is a business. And, Shawn, you're obviously in a flipping business, owning and holding. I know you do that too. That's all a business, no matter how you look at it.
Excellent point, Andrew, that it really is a business. You have to treat it that way. Did you
we've got some
catch
questions
that question
here
there? So Ricardo was asking.
Yes.
Actually, there was a couple different. If you're reading them, I'll just let you go ahead with it.
Yeah. So Troy, what strategies are people using for their money in the short term, 3 months, waiting to see how the market pans out? So I'll answer that from my standpoint. I'm kind of crying that it's sitting in cash, and it's one of those things I hate, but I do it anyway because it lets me sleep at night. So everyone has their own psychological need, what you feel comfortable, what helps you sleep at night. But I've heard some people talking about gold and silver, and something that holds its value. For anyone who wants to nerd out about economics, we have a fiat currency. It's not backed by anything but our government, which means we think it has value because the government told us to think that. So just something to keep in mind. Inflation will happen at the end of all this. I'm quite confident about that. So, hey, we're in real estate. That's the great thing. These are real assets that hold real value, just like gold does to a lot of people. So Ricardo asked if I could expand a little bit more about my application process online and give you some tips on the video tour to show the rentals. You know what? I don't mind. Maybe I'll regret this one day, but I don't mind sharing the link to my one property here. So I'll just put that in. Guys, just please don't enter anything into the forms. But I built this free site. So maybe just don't all go there at once and continue listening for the moment. But just if I don't do it now, I won't remember to. Oh crap! I just sent it to Corey. Corey, can you just forward that back to the group? Okay, so my application, so I'll just explain it. Basically, I use something, okay, so this is all free. You can go to Weebly.com and get a free domain. You can't get it branded. If you want it branded and have your own specific domain, like myhouse.com, then you have to pay for that. But if you get the something.weebly.com, it's free. So I just set that up. I put all my professional photos on it. And then I use something called Jot Forms, which is totally free. And it asks a series of questions that I would want to ask to a tenant before I would show them the property. So if you use the link that Corey is going to share, Corey just shared it, that should show you how I've set it up. I've also included my application on there. It's a bit of a work in progress, but if you go right down to the very bottom, you'll see I've included a floor plan. I've included a virtual tour that they can click. So everything's there. So then when I post it on Facebook Marketplace, I get response, and I literally just send them a copy and paste. Here's my process. If you're interested in seeing it, click this link, fill out the form, and then I'll get it. And then we make a decision from there. So that's what I've done. And I've got one day that I'm allowing people to see it, and that's it. And that day is coming up the next week. So that's what I'm doing there. I've got quite a few people lined up to see that one. And okay, so just looking at this last one. So iGuide 360 tours could be a benefit for landlords trying to show their units. Too many people virtually. They're about $225. They access a website for iGuide, and iGuide provides and gives the measuring tools to see if your furniture, et cetera, will fit. Oh, that's really cool. I use Matterport. So I found a guy, I think Corey used him as well, out of London, just found him. Good technology. Yeah. So as long as you got one of those virtual tour technologies, I find they're really great. Any other questions other than that? I'm, again, happy to speculate on the economics or whatever else anyone wants to talk about.
So Andrew, on the development side and the new construction side, what are you seeing right now that's happening with that? Is there, besides the delays in getting some of the material, and are you seeing anything with inspections or anything of that nature that's going to delay you or stop you from basically moving forward?
Nothing that would stop, but definitely delay. The inspectors are actually pretty good. So the one I'm doing is in Plimpton, Wyoming, Lambton County. So their inspectors are more salt of the earth. Like, they don't really use tech. You call them up, hey, can you come out and inspect this? So I kind of like that and hate it at the same time. But they've been good. They kind of just keep your distance from them. They're practicing the social distancing. They're going into the unit by themselves. And then they tell you. So you can still talk to them. I'm not working on one in London right now to be able to tell how London's working, but I do understand that they are still running their inspections on existing projects. As far as labor goes, this is the challenge with apathy when people have the option of staying home at $2,000 a month. Yes. I mean, that's pretty enticing for a lot of people who aren't making much more than that by working, and they, if they think they're taking a risk, then they just assume stay home. And this is where I think it's really important that, just a side note, because it's in all of our interests, is that we really do need to push Justin Trudeau to actually make a plan for how we get back to civilization. I don't ever hear that coming out of his mouth as to what the plan is to return to work and to save our small business owners. Really feeling for our small business owners right now, because they've been, their constitutional right to conduct business has been taken away, and they can't recoup that money. They're still accruing rent every month and accruing debt. So side tangent, I know, but we do want people to get back to that. But yeah, like the answer really is apathy. As long as people can get $2,000 a month to stay at home, it's going to be a challenge for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, just as we're moving along here, we're a little over halfway, but if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box there. If you came on a little bit later when Jenn had already mentioned, just put in the person's name on the panel that you want it directed to, and then the question, so that we can get that to the appropriate person. If you have any questions, please put them in there now. Anybody on the panel, I'll just sort of leave this open to anybody who wants to answer, but as we're sort of pivoting and moving forward here, what is your thoughts on how long that this is going to last? Obviously it's speculation and we're all just sort of guessing, but how long you think that this is going to last and impact the same way that we're seeing it right now until we return to some sort of back to normalcy for your business. Anybody want to jump on that?
I can just pick up where I left off, unless anyone else wants to.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so starting with so under a current economic policy, how we would treat something like this. I've heard everyone's throwing around all kinds of fear. What if this is as bad as the Great Depression or anything like that? First off, again, no one knows. No one could really know. I highly doubt we'd ever end up in a situation like the Great Depression again, because back then we didn't have the story is we didn't have the economic knowledge to know that you needed to keep interest rates low. And they didn't even know what economic easing was at the time, which is really when they just have helicopter money. They keep throwing money at you. Now that we have that, it's really hard to stay down for long. So what I would think is, and it's totally dependent on how long this virus thing plays out, and there's a whole wormhole or rabbit hole to go down there. But whenever they say go, it's a question of how many businesses were lost and aren't coming back, because that has a compounding effect on how many employees they had that no longer have jobs. Does the market lose some of its major companies? Some of those blue chip companies go under because of poor cash positions, too much debt. There's so many variables. So the question of how long this goes will really dictate how much of that happens. The more that fall, the more compounding effect that has. Because if you're a baby boomer right now and you just lost your pension fund, you're probably not going to want to spend money. You're probably going to save every dollar of that helicopter money that comes down. You're going to be putting it on your mattress. You're not going to spend anything. And keep in mind, one person's spending is another person's income. So when people aren't spending, our economy is not growing. More business owners are feeling that. So I really, really hope that we end this soon, so that we save a lot of those businesses. And then I think, our government's they're gonna keep our interest rates super low, so money's cheap, people are borrowing. They're gonna incentivize banks. This is my speculation, but I believe they would incentivize banks to lend. They will back loans like CMHC does, but they'll do it even on everything else, and they won't charge a premium just to get the economy going. So I do believe that modern economic policy is going to push a strong recovery when it happens. But I also do believe that that's going to lead to a lot of inflation. And that's going to be like, you're going to the grocery store and you used to buy a can of beans for $2. And now that can of beans is $8. And, then you might go, a few months later and it's now $16. And on one hand, that could be really good for investors in the long run, because say you owe $500,000 on your mortgage, and your asset that used to be $1 million is now $3 million because the dollar got worth less and your asset held its value. So there is a lot of silver lining potentially here, as long as we can weather that storm, as long as we've got the cash reserves to get through that. So how long, I don't know, and no one does. So the key thing is, are you in a position to cash flow in a down market and an up market? Is your asset something that people will use in a down market? If we go through that whole thing where people are just really, really tentative and scared, are they going to want to rent what you have? What are you buying? So if you could focus on stuff that really does serve the middle class, that need for shelter, I think that you've got a great opportunity to weather the storm long term. And so if you still want to buy right now, there's still opportunity. You can still buy that kind of thing. I'm sure Justin and his team can help you out. Right, Justin?
Awesome, Andrew. Actually, as each of the panelists answer, perhaps, no one has a crystal ball. So of course we're all, kind of making educated guesses, but perhaps you could also share with your view of the future, what season you're in specifically as an investor. Are you in a season of growth right now? Are you taking advantage of what's happening? Are you in a season of maintenance? Maybe you could just speak to your own strategy at the moment. What are your goals moving forward in the next, 3 to 6 months?
So for me, I'm just tentatively watching what's happening. Of course, I'm keeping an eye. If I start to see an opportunity to make, extreme under market value kind of offers on stuff because there are properties that are sitting, I will definitely look at that. I haven't, for probably about a year and a half, I haven't really been actively trying to acquire more from my portfolio as keepers, just because I didn't love the cash flow numbers the way they were going to work. Pretty picky. London, as the people here from London know, it kind of got out of control, and the numbers that used to really work well for me didn't work so well anymore. And I didn't feel compelled like I needed to buy a house for the sake of buying a house. So I've stuck to my fundamentals, and some will say that that's made me slower, but I feel like I'm better capable to handle stuff like this because of it.
Jen, there's a question there for Kyle in the chat about appraisals, and if you could talk to appraisals more.
Yep, there was a couple questions that I saw written down. The first one was from Anna Scott. It was about the Scotia HELOC conversation that I was having. To Cole's notes, the post that came out was that Scotia is no longer allowing you to use their HELOC product as a down payment if you are getting the subsequent mortgage with Scotia Bank. So if you're going to use your Scotia Bank HELOC, you need to get a mortgage from somebody else, as they won't allow it for their own down payment. They won't allow the HELOC as a down payment for their own mortgage. Now, this is a temporary measure. It's not something that they've written into stone in their permanent guidelines. So if you have a Scotia HELOC and that's how you're planning on funding your next investment, you're good to go. You just can't get the subsequent mortgage with them. John Simpson, you asked about the appraisals. So this is where, as professional real estate investors, we need to level our game up when we are getting an appraisal. It starts when the appraiser calls to book it. Have a conversation with that appraiser. Ask them how they're doing, how their family's doing. Are they a little freaked out about all this? Maybe they're not the most level-headed appraiser, and maybe you're best requesting another appraiser coming through. Secondly, you need to be prepared when that appraiser is going to the house. Pictures of the property, list of updates, providing comparables. They're not allowed into the property right now, so they're not going to be able to see your beautiful feature wall that you did that's going to really increase the value, or whatever other little nuance that they might have seen before. You need to do a good job selling it. So from the appraisal perspective, I'm still getting appraisals coming in at purchase price more often than not. But that's kind of the appraisal conversation. The other one, Corey messaged me. What was that? Corey, new investors. Sorry. The mortgage deferral. Okay, I put a post about this the other day, and I got a lot of good feedback, a little bit of slack back on it. Personally, the mortgage deferral is not something that I'm doing with any of my properties. My tenants are currently all paying rent on time. I have 3 months. That's my number of cash reserve in all my accounts. So I have 3 months of expenses in there, and all tenants have currently paid on time. So I don't need a mortgage deferral. Equifax has officially posted, or I'm not sure about posted, but I received an internal memo that a mortgage deferral does have a negative impact on your credit. Now, it's not listed as an M1 an M2 or a missed mortgage payment. It's listed, it's increasing your utilization score because the interest is accruing. So that's a marginal impact. That doesn't show up as a missed mortgage payment. I don't think it's going to have a major effect on your credit long term. But if you have several mortgages with one company and 20 days into a pandemic, you've needed to call for a deferral, you better, their credit risk department is going to recognize that. If you don't think there's going to be an internal memo on your file and indicating that you weren't able to make one mortgage payment after a pandemic, I think it's a mistake. So now, with that all being said, if you are a new investor and maybe you did just use your cash reserves to put your down payment on your second property and your tenant did pay, but you're in a really tight position, don't miss a mortgage payment over it. Take the deferral. My advice that I've been giving on this is take only what you need. If your tenant's not paying and you're not working and you need to defer your mortgage, take it. But if you just think this is a great new strategy to increase your cash flow, I don't think it's helping the situation.
Thanks. I think we had one more for you there, Kyle, from Johnny. Where do you think rates are going, variable versus fixed right now?
Oh, geez. I saw a really cool graph, and it showed interest rates over time, and it kind of went like this and went like this, and then it said May 2020, and it went like this. So that's, I think, the best description of it. It's interesting right now. The mortgage business is absolutely booming. Rates are in the news. People are talking about interest rates. People have time to pay attention to their finances, so they're calling. They're having those questions. In terms of where interest rates are going right now, I don't have the crystal ball. I like the variable rate right now. Lenders are increasing their fixed rate because they're worried about delinquency. They're worried about people not being able to make the payments. So 5-year fixed right now on a rental refinance is not very attractive. So if I'm doing a lot of variable rates right now. It gives people flexibility that in the next year, if interest rates start going up, pay the 3-month penalty, lock in at a fixed rate. It gives you the ability to a predictable penalty if you need to sell the property for whatever reason, if you're looking to change your strategy. So at the end of the day, fixed or variable is always a personal decision. If you're not going to be able to sleep at night because you have a variable interest rate, take the fix. But if you're looking for a little bit of flexibility and looking to have a lower payment right now, I like the variable rate.
Kyle, we had another question pop up here. Going back to the deferral. So what if the same property you're deferring, you will be selling as soon as you get into the new normal life? You just have
I'm going to stick with take what you need. If you can make the payment and you're going to be selling and freeing up the cash in 60 to 90 days anyways, maintain your payments. Don't put that little blemish on your internal credit with internal profile with that lending institution. I would say keep up the payments where you can. Sorry, Jed. The other thing, Mark's asking about the private lending, and I just want to kind of piggyback to what everyone else was saying earlier. Talking about buying properties, not just deep discounts, good deals. If you're looking for private money right now, you need to have a great deal. Private lenders, if they can go buy the same property on the MLS right now and you got it at listing price and it's an average deal, don't expect a private lender to be excited to give you 85 to 90% loan to value on that, or excited to pull money out of their line of credit to lend to you. If you have a great deal on a property or a strong equity position, that's where you're going to be attracting private money.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. Sarah.
I got a question for Justin.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Take over, Shawn.
Hey,
Yes,
Justin,
sir.
just what do you see right now, or what do you see coming up with larger multifamilies? Do you think there's going to be an increase of inventory coming on from sellers who are looking to either get out or scared of what's happening right now? Do you see that changing at all?
I think so. I personally, if we had had this conversation pre-COVID, the conversation we'd be having is, there's just no inventory and it's hard to make deals work unless you have access to private money. And private money back then was a lot simpler because they had their pens in their hand, they're ready to write checks. I actually wanted to jump in and kind of touch on that because I have some really good contacts in that world that cover a myriad of different products, right? So to answer your first question, one reason why a lot of private lenders are putting their pens down is just because of how their business works, right? There's one private lender that I'm really close with that actually funds half the builders in London. They're not writing anything because they also know there's builders out there that have so much inventory, they're over leveraged, and they're just going to see what happens, and they're prepared for the worst case scenario. There's other private lenders that I have that, there's ones that I know we have in common where, it's all relational, and they believe in people like you and will give you a way better LTV than they will another person. Like literally, I've seen one private lender distributing 2 loans to 2 different people and had conversations with them because I'm the guy that they call to vet the deal and say, does this make sense? Where do I need to be? And I saw one, and Kyle's aware of this, where the LTV or the loan to value is 40% on that side because the guy was ultra high risk, where the LTV on the other side for a guy like yourself is going to be upwards of 75 to, who knows, it could be up to 90 depending on the business model because you're tried and true. They know you, they know what you're capable of, and they've told me this to my face when I'm vetting deals, that they have a level of confidence in what you're going to be able to accomplish, right? And I think that's something people need to be aware of, is this is a relational business. It's a long-term relational business. Kyle was bang on the money in terms of being prepared when you're approaching private lenders and giving them an understanding that you're running a business. This is what you're going to do. As prepared as you're going to be for the private lender, you need to be prepared for the appraiser. But then let's trickle that right down to the multifamily deal. So when we analyze multifamily deals, we actually run a scenario independent of my buyer. So I'm actually talking to the bankers about, DCRs and what they see, and is the deal going to happen at this price point? If it's not, then we go to the private lenders. We get an idea of their level of expectations. We'll still pitch the deal to a lot of investors, and some people will get excited because there's $1 million upside on a commercial property or a multifamily building. But what happens a lot of times is, the expectations of the sellers have been so high, they don't really care about if you can get it funded or not. They just want this price because that's what everybody else is getting in the marketplace. So I think the good thing that's going to come from all this is that leveling of the playing field that we've been waiting for is likely going to come, because the commercial world, the industrial world, they're taking a beating right now. I would not want to be all in the retail or office sector, because I think both of those sectors are going to change drastically in terms of the needs of those people. I talked about how residential is still busy, investing's kind of on hold. Commercial and industrial is like a hard reset. Like people walking away from contracts, AAA tenants, calling landlords that I could name and you guys would know in London, saying, yeah, we're not going to pay rent. I hope we could be your tenant when I come back. Try and sue me. So I think that's going to trickle down to the guys that own these apartment buildings. A lot of times they have these holdings too. So they're going to look at, well, what can I sell right now to kind of get through this next phase? I'm going to keep my plazas. I'm going to keep these buildings. I got to figure it out. You know what? I got a couple $1 million sitting in this building. Yeah, you know what? I'll pay the capital gains on. And that's where you can get creative and come in and say, listen, I get you got to pay the capital gains. I understand from a financing position. This is where I'm at. And go back to relational business. And quite often the advice to real estate agents that might be watching, take yourself out of the transaction. Like I've got one right now. It's in Kilworth, but it's a deal where essentially I'm bringing two people together, and I'm probably going to let them just have a bottle of tequila after COVID, and they're going to sort the deal out, and I'm going to take care of the details. But, it's understanding that the relationships are really where you're going to find the deals. And it's those guys that are in those positions, I think, that you'll be able to capitalize on and get those large apartment buildings that have been held by them for so long.
That's awesome. Shawn, did you have anything else you wanted to ask there?
No, that's exactly what I was looking for. And it's a good point Justin said. It is obviously relational, and guys like Justin and Jeff Wybo do a good job of connecting, the buyers and sellers for that. And so you want to be working with people who are doing that. I was kind of more, and he answered the question, but my context was in more of, is there going to be more coming to the market as well, like on MLS, as well as this sort of, relational stuff is going to happen, and it's going to increase now as well. And like you said, all these guys with commercial buildings that are relying on, businesses or industrial people to pay their rents that aren't paying it now and for who knows how long are going to get killed. So what do? Do they sell those buildings that aren't making any money and not bringing in any rents, or are they going to sell their multiplexes? So,
I'll elaborate on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin.
I'll elaborate on that, like just purely for MLS. I think it's going to be the same as it's always been. You and I both know that the majority of the deals that get done on the commercial stuff, they happen off market. As soon as you're above 12 units, you'll see the ones that pop on the market and everybody fights over them. Keep an eye on the Toronto Real Estate Board, because sometimes they'll list one on our board and none of the local guys pay attention to Treb, so you can snag a deal that way. But you're still going to have, sometimes unskilled or realtors that don't really understand large multifamily properties, listing properties for too much because they want to get a sign up, or, you're a guy that just knows somebody and says, let's throw this on the market and see what happens. I don't anticipate you're going to see a ton more large multifamily. I still think you have to hunt for those deals is, I guess, my main answer.
Corey had a couple good questions he posted in the chat here. I'm just trying to see. I can't scroll up the first one. I think the first one was asking the panelists, is anyone doing anything drastically different in their business right now? That would be a no.
I'll just unmute myself here, guys. I, whether you love Grant Cardone or not, I was listening to him on a podcast the other day, and he's actually giving tenants like a month or two discount on rent if they prepay like the next 10 months, and he's accepting credit cards and just really trying to stock up on cash. He's been smashed before in the last recession, so he's really just trying to be armored up with as much cash as possible. So I just thought I'd throw it out to the group to are you doing anything that's been totally different but totally working out for you lately?
For me, nothing totally different. I mean, it's just moving everything virtually. We have an office that is vacant all the time now. I think one of the things with Grant Cardone is because he went through the crash, he's very afraid of this. And I think this is a different situation. If you have reserves and can wait this out, I could be wrong, but I don't expect this to be a long issue as it was in the 2008 recession in the U.S. So I think it was. I heard stories of Grant Cardone like firing half of his sales team like the next day when this COVID thing got big. For example, with anyone who has employees, I'm keeping everyone on the payroll. I'm having them all work remotely. I want them all to be confident, knowing that I have their back. Because if I thought this was going to be, a bigger issue, I would have to consider laying off some people. But right now, I'm going to keep paying everyone. I can go through this without a problem. But now I hope that my employees are going to understand I have their back and that they should have mine. So I'm not doing much differently. I'm just, in terms of I think one of the questions was going to be, how are we pivoting things? I'm still in a high growth mode right now. Our company's in a high growth mode, but we're pulling back on something. So we were testing some new marketing channels or going to test some new marketing channels. We're just kind of keeping our marketing spend about what it was before. We don't want to get into new untested channels right now for sellers, just because it's not worth spending the extra money right now with all the uncertainty, not to mention they'll react with the whole COVID thing going on. So things are generally working as they are, as they have been in the past. I'll answer now that kind of what I think on a recovery here, or how soon will this go back to normal. I think I imagine, I know Shawn touched on getting permits and buying something where you need permit work. I imagine right now, if you were to buy something closing in 45, 60 days, you can't get in before closing because, maybe you view it once, but you're not getting all your measurements to get your permit drawings. So you have to close on it, then start your permit drawings, finish the drawings a few weeks later, get the engineers done, submit it to the city. They're taking longer than normal because they're short-staffed. Finally get your permit drawings. I would think if you're buying something today, by the time you get your permit drawings, you'd be allowed to work on it. I wouldn't be overly worried about that. If I was closing in 2 weeks, that would be a different story. So I'm not overly that's kind of a timeline I see where we're going to be at least partially back to work as a province. I just don't see us in a few months, contractors still sitting at home. I don't see it happening. I think things are going to start reopening slowly. People will be more careful, but people are going to start going back to work and we're going to be able to continue as a business. For me, a lot of me selling properties, me being able to wholesale, it's two sides. Right now is a time where I can get good deals. It's harder to sell them. But, and this is a question to everyone. Let me know. You guys are in London. If I buy a 3-bedroom brick bungalow that's 1,200 square feet in a good area of London in original condition from the 1970s for under $200,000, would you buy that? People who are in London,
give me
would you buy that?
5. I want 5 of them right now.
Exactly. Okay, so some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. My thing is, brick bungalow, 1,200 square feet, good condition in London, for under 200 grand, yeah, all day long. If you're a long-term hold investor, you should be buying that. I'm seeing a lot more yeses, so that's good. So that's what I mean. There's two parts: getting good deals, but also you're going to see, to be able to wholesale, if you have that confidence that things are going to go up or that the market is coming back, you're going to see the buyers pull back. So in the meantime, deep discounts, because people will buy things that are very good price. Longer term, as confidence comes back, you take a risk buying now at a deep discount, but you're also missing out on opportunities if you wait too long. I think long-term rental investors should be looking for opportunities right now. My thought is by the end of the summer, we'll pretty much be back to normal in my business from the wholesaling perspective. I think we'll fully be going back on showings. I think we'll be showing houses as relatively as normal. We might have a hand washing station at the door, maybe giving out some masks. I don't know, but I think we'll be back to normal. I did have a question. Did I answer that from? Corey asked, am I preparing for an uptick in private sellers 3 to 6 months down the road once some of the financial pain hits from layoffs, etc.? So, some sellers might be getting, you might think, well, they're getting a reprieve on their mortgage. They can get a mortgage deferral. My understanding, though, is if you're already behind on your mortgage payment, you can't get a deferral. You don't qualify, because a deferral is essentially an application. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but I believe that's how it works. So sellers who sell to us, they're the type who stick their head in the sand and they wait until they're 6 months into the bank telling them they're gonna go power sale before they call us. They're not calling us the first payment in this. So these people who would miss payments now or who are qualifying for mortgage deferrals, they're not calling us anytime soon. It's the people who were already having issues before, who are going to have bigger issues now, and are also seeing, oh no, how am I going to sell this with COVID? Those are the people who are calling us. So we're going to be seeing those not only in 3 to 6 months, but people now. Longer term, every time there's a big upheaval, like this COVID thing, there are going to be some people who get the shit end of the stick, unfortunately. And some of those people are going to be in a position where they need to sell quickly, sell privately, sell a house that just doesn't look like it should be able to sell on the MLS, and they'll be calling us. So I think this will allow us to get good deals. I'm not worried about getting good deals. The question is always going to be, how do we sell them?
Absolutely. So we are getting close to, let's see, it's 8:40. And I just want to be mindful of the time. Before we go into, I think we'll maybe just do one last piece of advice from each one of the panelists. But before we do that, we do still have quite a number of people on the call. So guys, an ask that I have, because I know there's a lot of you that are new to ONREIA, if you have not yet, been on our Facebook page, our Instagram page, if you could go there and like it, if you could, make a comment about, your experience with ONREIA tonight, how you thought it went. Hopefully it's all good stuff. But share your experience with what you've learned, because really we are here to support investors, and we're investors ourselves. We don't claim to know everything, but we want to bring people together to share knowledge. So the more people that know about who we are, what we do, how we can support, the better. So with that being said, if you could go ahead and, leave a comment or leave a rating, whatever that might be, we would love you to do that. Sorry, I'm just trying to follow the chat real quick. So I'd love to hear, one last piece of advice from each one of the panelists moving forward. It looks like there are some more questions coming in, though, as we are wrapping up. So to Justin, maybe Justin, if you can, to each one of the people I'm going to talk to here, if you could just answer the question and then give your one last piece of advice for investors. So I'll go over the question here from Travis. Do you think people are holding back on listing their properties right now? And when the restrictions are lifted, the market will be flooded with properties? If so, will this impact housing prices, more inventory, lower prices, that sort of thing?
The quick answer is yes and no. It depends on the properties and it depends on the sellers, right? Like when people always ask me how's the real estate market, I mean, you have to get hyper specific about what you're talking about. And if I'm talking, let's just say smaller or even larger multifamily in London, I don't think you're going to see a big flood of inventory. I think you're going to see a first round of people that list their properties and they're like, okay, we're out of this, let's go. And then you're going to see a second round. What I tend to see happen is the news articles will pick up that, oh, we had the best sales ever last month. And then you get a flood. We've always kind of navigated those peaks and valleys. Like we always look at, the life cycle of real estate and see where last June, all of a sudden there was too much inventory. And if you listed a property, all of a sudden you weren't getting multiples. But then you get to December, you're back in multiples. And then it's a Canadian long weekend and nobody's paying attention. And all of a sudden that property you listed is not getting multiples. The week after, everybody gets back, they're fresh, they're relaxed, and there's no inventory. So I would say work with your team or take a look at the MLS and look at those inventory counts and kind of play the inventory counts. I don't think you're going to be in a position where all of a sudden there's just too much, but there is going to be
a week or two within that gamut where you do find that all of a sudden there's a pile of multifamily properties got listed because everybody just read the same news article, called their realtor, and threw it on the market. As far as kind of a parting thought, I always say it doesn't matter if there's something good or bad that happens in your life. It's always good. Some of the biggest lessons I have ever had in my business came from things that I thought were the biggest thing ever. Oh my gosh, this went this way and I can't believe it happened. It's going to destroy me. And it ended up being the best thing that possibly happened. Case in point, last year, I actually fired a builder. Like, I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars of real estate over the next 5-year term. Didn't line up with my business model, didn't line up with how I wanted to do business long term, and I wanted to work with a specific niche of builders. Best decision I ever made. I actually got a phone call a month ago from somebody else that had an even bigger file that said they respected the fact that I left that relationship because of how I wanted to do my business. It's the same thing in this time, right? Like, everybody always says they wish they had more time because we're always running around, we're always busy. Well, now you have time. So I like the Andrew Hines approach of battening down the hatches, sharpening your sword, getting really, really good at your numbers more than anything. I think Shawn can attest to this. You're a numbers guy. You look at the deals, you look at the ins, you look at the outs, fine tune that. You will find money in your own deals and then redeploy with, a certain amount of conservativeness, but use it as an opportunity to look at every single system that you have in your business. Because I think, Jenn, you mentioned that you're running it as a business. So from how you go out and acquire properties, take a piece of paper and write down a standard operating procedure of how you go and do that and see where you can refine steps, or maybe you're deploying time against something that you don't need to. Look at how you exit a property and that process. Look at how you find like every single aspect of your business, you should be laser focused on that so that when we come out of this, you get to hit the ground running and you've just built a better machine. And then make a habit of that every single year, because if you keep refining your systems, it's absolutely stunning what you can accomplish in a short time. But you have to have the wherewithal to look at yourself with a hard lens and kind of deconstruct your business and then rebuild it to what you want it to be.
Fantastic advice there. Shawn, we had someone ask, flipping, I lost it in the chat. Did you see that question come up?
Yeah, I think it was just about what am I doing right now if I'm holding back. Oh, as a flipper, are you slowing down? Are you involved in properties that now have to be longer term hold because of COVID? So, and just as my last point was going to be, basically right now, and this is my own personal opinion, and everybody's got a different risk tolerance than the other, but I see this as a very temporary pause. And I'm taking this opportunity to push forward harder than I was pushing before. And I think those that do that now during this pause will come out of it even further ahead than they were. Right? Wealth is built during these times. So take advantage of the opportunities that are going to come to you now. Be prepared for it. But you can also do that with a side of caution, right? So as I said before, yes, I'm still buying flips. Yes, I'm still moving forward. But with those flips, I want to, have some buffer with, extra money, some extra time, deeper discounts, a secondary exit strategy, a third strategy, a fourth strategy, right? Like you need to have those things, but that's not going to stop from going forward. And I think now is the perfect time to move forward as much as possible. And because I'm just talking my last words here, but just wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight on this platform. I really hope you got something out of it. Please let me know, send us a message or in the chat box here if you enjoyed this, and just wanted to thank everyone for joining us, especially the panel members as well.
All right. Thanks, Shawn. I could give you some time at the end to say that too. I won't pull out the hanger or anything.
Well, I know how much you like being on camera. It's okay.
Sarah, why don't you share with us your thoughts, closing thoughts? Oh, did we lose Sarah?
Am I
there you are.
Making sure it was unmuted. Yeah, so I mean, I definitely echo kind of what everybody else was saying. I do think that this is going to be a shorter blip. I think, definitely like in the next 6 months, when some of these mortgage deferrals start to come due, and, landlords are really starting to feel the pinch if they are over leveraged, if they did not, put aside this 3 months of buffer and, holding costs aside, we're probably going to see some interesting opportunities. And I'm definitely taking Shawn's approach. We are not slowing down. And I think, it's definitely right to be cautious, but I think, like I said, like there are still lenders out there. There are still JV partners that are wanting to buy, that see this as actually a great time. So if you're thinking now is a time to just kind of sit on the sidelines, maybe just, put your head in the sand and ignore it and say, you know what, we'll invest when the time is right. I don't think there's ever a right time to invest. 6 months ago, I heard so many people complaining, oh, the market's too hot. Oh, I'm in multiple offers. I'm going to wait till the market cools down. And then now it's like the market's cool, things are a little riskier. And now everyone's like, oh, I don't know, the market's a little risky. So is there ever like the perfect time to invest? I don't think so. I think it's like, you just have to work with what you've got. Like, know your numbers, know what your ultimate goal is, like be smart, like don't take on a ton of risk right now, but pick good, solid properties, because now is not the time to just, ignore it, sit on the sidelines, and not get the opportunities to take on some good deals. And because I'm kind of like the JV person on the panel, I also want to reiterate for people too, with what Justin was saying, like now is the time when you've been saying, I don't have enough time to be active on social media. I don't really know like how to raise capital, or I don't know if I should promote myself, or, I'm having a trouble raising capital or getting noticed and, getting more cash. Guys, now is the time, like there's so many people, everyone's sitting home in their pajamas, they're online, everyone's scrolling through Facebook. If you've been waiting on the sidelines to start up a social media brand and start to get a little more notice, like now is a time and people are watching. So use your time wisely. Yeah.
I'm so glad you touched on that, Sarah. And that floated away on me. But honestly, like have you raised all of your capital that you've used for your JVs online? Like everything's come from social media?
I would say like 99%. Like I get money off of Instagram. Like I just raised $300,000 the other day from someone I literally connected with on Instagram. And we had never met because like we can't even meet face to face now. We did like a phone call and he was like, okay, cool, here you go. So it's like, it's possible, right? And now it's even better because everyone's home, like everyone's available. So yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of scrolling going on. So maybe you can just go one step deeper before we move on to the rest of the panel. Talk about, what are maybe 3 tips you have for people who maybe aren't so comfortable promoting themselves, or they're not really sure, Shawn Allen, pay attention, not really sure what they should be posting about. Can you give some tips for people how to leverage social media properly?
Absolutely. I get that question so often. I think a lot of people are a bit shy about video. They're a little shy about sharing like their personal lives. So, there's still a way to do a good brand, still keeping it personal, even if you don't necessarily want to get up on camera and, start doing like half an hour videos. But if you are just like a little shy and need a little push, I still recommend it, guys. Like, not to get all nerdy out on algorithms and stuff when it comes to social media platforms, but videos trend so much better. They capture so much of like Facebook's algorithms, for example. So if you can get on video, try it. It's definitely worth a shot. If you're not comfortable with video, there's still a lot of stuff you can do. And what I would be posting is stay away from memes, stay away from boring real estate articles, stay away from just like boring, dry, generic, like, oh, look, here's a rental property. People actually don't really care about that, to be honest. And we all know, you scroll past that stuff on Facebook. You really want to be sharing like personal stories, your journey, add some humor, add some sarcasm, like show some of that like flavor about who you are, get a little personal about your whole, like, how did you get into real estate? Why? Share some of the bad stories too, because you can always turn them into kind of like teaching moments. People like to see the humanity behind the investor. So I would definitely focus on more personal posts. Yeah.
Amazing tips. Thank you, Sarah, so much.
No problem.
Who haven't I called on? Luc, you have any closing thoughts for us?
No, I think I pretty much said we're going to set. I don't think the real estate market has been substantially changed by this, because this is not a real estate issue. People losing their jobs will affect real estate, maybe a little, but overall, I don't think this is a real estate issue. I don't think this is, for whoever's been saying the crash is coming, this is not the catalyst, in my opinion. So be conservative, be careful, but the sky's not falling. The world's not over. If you get good opportunities for good properties, like Andrew was talking about, good investment properties that you want to hold a long time, now's the time to be buying them, not shying away from it.
Awesome. Absolutely.
You just muted yourself, Jen.
Oh, whoops. Sorry. Oh. Thanks. Kyle, closing thoughts and or tips for anyone, Kyle?
Yeah, so it's amazing just to be on this panel with all you guys, and it's amazing. You can tell how it seems like we're all very much in the same opinion on these things. In terms of my prediction, obviously I'll use the crystal ball disclaimer, but I'm hoping construction's up and running by June 1st. Maybe we still have to stay 6 feet away at the LCBO, but beyond that, I think the real estate business and the core stuff like construction that a lot of us do is going to be up and running in not that long. In terms of tips, and things to do, and I'll go from a mortgage perspective. If you're looking to make changes in your finances, and I'm sure you've heard this from every mortgage broker in the world, but get organized. If you have time, get your 2019 taxes done. If you're show a decent income so you can qualify for things. But certainly get organized. It makes a big difference with lenders. If you have leases that are 2 years old, you're going to need a tenant acknowledgement. Get digital. Send that out with a HelloSign package or a DocuSign package. Get your tenants' acknowledgements up. All that stuff. Right now, on the underwriting side, underwriters are not looking at files unless they are complete. So in the 6 months ago, if you were missing your 2018 NOA, I could get a commitment conditional upon that NOA. Right now, if you don't have the NOA, the underwriter won't even pick up the file. So if you're looking to make changes with your finances, get organized, get organized. I guess I'll just go there. And then I'll just, in terms of what we're doing, we are still actively seeking apartment buildings. People are going to need a place to self-isolate and quarantine, and I want that to be on a building that I own. So we're still actively seeking apartment buildings, and we're just going to stick to the core fundamentals right now that we've built our business on.
Awesome. Andrew, final thoughts?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I would just build on what Kyle said there. I mean, it's always about the fundamentals, and that was the funny thing. It's not really much changed for me. The fundamentals are still the same. So I would say, depending on where you are, if you're still new, I'm still really busy right now. So it's kind of not like I would be looking at more properties if I had more time available for it. But if you've got the time, grab a cash flow sheet and start doing like sort of paper calculations on rental properties and see which ones work for you, which ones don't. Look at properties on the MLS, get Justin to send you a couple of listings and crunch your own numbers. See how they work. Get really good at recognizing what a good deal is to you, how it fits with your business model, knowing which tenant you'd be seeking, what that tenant would be paying, estimate your expenses, and then run it by an experienced real estate investor that can tell you, hey, this number's off, this isn't likely, or hey, don't forget about that. And if you can make your deal work, and you have a couple of specific examples and you run it by somebody and they say, hey, well, on a house like this, you might have an expense here. You can practice really good fundamental investing right here, right now, and proceed forward. And again, with the understanding that these, real estate is a long-term game in a lot of ways. Of course, there are people here who make a business off of flipping. I've flipped several properties as well in my companies. That has a time and place too. But if you're talking about long-term investing and you're new to this, I would definitely say use this time for that, or use it to build your brand. As Sarah had mentioned, there's just so much you can be doing to make this productive time, not just sit around time. So that's what I would say. And And thanks for having me, and thanks to all the panel members. You guys were awesome.
Fantastic. Thanks, Andrew. I love that. And it's consistent. I mean, all of you were asked on this panel for a reason. You are leaders in the field. And the fact that you are all saying, use this time to work on your business, not in your business, grow yourself, grow your systems, get strategic, start analyzing what your business looks like right now so you can fine tune it. Love it. I also want to ask one more final point, and I'm not sure, I hope he's still on here, but Jeff, you've been our sponsor for so long. I wanted to include you on final thoughts. Any final thoughts for our listeners here? No, maybe he's gone. Oh no, there you are.
Hello. Yeah, just use this time wisely, guys. It's an amazing time in your life, kind of right now. You got to take a little bit of break, spend time with your families, but yeah, focus on real estate. Go out there and crush it, guys.
Awesome. Shawn, did you want to finish off with anything specifically before I talk about our next meeting?
No, again, just wanted to say thank you for everyone that came on. Thank you to the panelists, and thanks for everyone for joining us. I thought it went really well, and I hope everyone got some good value out of it.
Absolutely. Thank you again to all of our panelists. And I believe this is recording, although I don't know what it's going to look like because I've been flipping back and forth through screens. So I don't know if it records what I'm doing or if it just records on its own. So this is recording. We will try and get it out. We have a YouTube channel that we're starting up, so I will see if I can get it posted there. I'm not so tech savvy, so you're going to have to hang on for that. And wanted to mention that we are looking like we're going to be doing this online thing for a little bit. So we have planned to move ONREIA online again next month. So mark your calendar. I do this every month at our meetings. Get out your smartphone. Mark your calendar for May 13th. We are going to be doing another online event. And we have asked Dave DeBow to join us. He is going to be talking about raising capital during this very unique time. So he is going to be talking more about that. We are still looking at what else we might be talking about that evening, but that's the plan for now. So mark your calendar. I will be posting a link to that in the next few weeks. And it's 9 o'clock right on the dot. So I think we managed all right tonight. Thanks again so much, everybody, for joining us. Stay safe and work on your business. Have fun. Take care.
Hey, Jen, I was just going to say there were some valuable links shared in the chat. Maybe you just, kind of keep the window open for a minute or two in case people want to copy paste them or something like that.
Great idea. Why don't you guys scroll on up? I'm actually going to save the chat. I think I can save it in a folder. So perhaps I can get that out to everyone as well. So I'll keep this open. You guys don't have to, if you want to take a little bit of time to scroll back up through the chat. I will stay on the meeting for a few more minutes, but I'm going to go silent here. So take care, everyone. Be safe, and we'll see you next month.